Thank you, Mary. Modern Tashan, Jasper Harashing, all you've reached. Marsold a couple of dinja, came a couple of blian and Shire and Ulskull, agus be Magoni, Fear Hostel, near a Tagaman, near a Spalia Clia, Con Shala Cav, a Garna Drav. So I'm always delighted to be back in Galway, where I spent my college years. Great stories, but I won't go into them this morning. And it's great to be back in Salt Hill and looking over Galway Bay and the sun shining and the waves. It's magical, the magical light of the West. It's fantastic to be back, to meet people again. I was chatting to people I almost don't recognise because I haven't seen them in the flesh for so long. People haven't recognised me because I've developed glasses as a result of spending 2 years in front of a screen. So it shows the impact that the pandemic has had on us all. I'd like to thank Laura and then Emer for really setting the scene for us this morning. Laura set out in terms of the EPA strategic plan and some of those big questions that are facing Ireland and the government and our people in relation to the environmental challenge and how we respond to it. Emer really set the scene in terms of our challenges in the water space. You'll see some commonality in what I'm going to say in what both Laura and Emer have said, and I think you would hope that would be the case. It is very important that the agency, the EPA, and the government and the departments are aligned in our responses, and the EPA is a huge part of our infrastructure in dealing with national environmental challenges, providing us with the information, the policy advice, and the prompt to do better. So thanks very much, Laura and Emer. And I suppose Emer having set out the challenge in terms of water quality, people are now looking to the government and to the department to say, well, how do we respond to those challenges? Before I get into the River Basin Management Plan and where we are in terms of the third cycle and where it is going, just to maybe recap for people's information, some information on the role of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage in relation to water. And as I was speaking to Laura on the way into the room this morning, there's a challenge, I think, in our government response in terms of cross-government coherence. A lot of the EPA's parent department is the Department of DEC, Energy and Climate Change. I suppose one of the recent things that has happened is that the Heritage Division has come back into the Department of Housing, so we are now better aligned in the biodiversity water space, but it's a continuing challenge across government to make sure we're aligned across the wider environmental suite of responses. So in terms of the Department of Housing and Water, our objectives are to work to protect, restore and enhance our water resources, to deliver healthy and well-protected waterways and groundwater, to provide quality, efficient and resilient public water and wastewater services, and that's through our investment and through our governance relationship with Irish Water. Improving quality drinking water and wastewater for rural and private water supplies, and that's through our support for the group water scheme sector, and I see representatives here from the National Federation of Group Water Schemes, as well as our supports in relation to private wells and septic tanks, and you can see that the issue of domestic wastewater treatment plants is still one of the pressures identified as needing further work. And we also have a role in relation to the marine environment, ensuring our seas are clean, healthy, productive and used sustainably. So that's the wide suite of responsibility which we have, but this morning I'll be focusing on that first bullet, delivering healthy and well-protected waterways and groundwaters, though they are all obviously connected. As we've heard from Emer just before us, 53% of surface waters are in satisfactory condition, but that is not a great figure for a country like Ireland, which depends and sells so much on the back of its green image, and in fact our green agricultural sector. That is not a good statistic. We know that the health of Ireland's water is under threat from the effects of intensive farming, commercial forestry, barrier siltation and channelization in rivers, wastewater discharges, and we also have the future challenges that climate change will bring. So that's where the River Basin Management Plan comes in. It is the overall document and policy framework which governs all our response to the broad suite of issues facing water quality, both in relation to investment and those actions that we need to take to protect waters from being polluted, protecting our drinking water sources, bathing water, and so on. And we are now in the period of our third cycle in accordance with the Water Framework Directive. These are 6-year cycles, as many people would know. First cycle, 2009 to 2014. The second cycle, 2015 to 2021. But because of other pressures within the department at that time and coming out of the economic crisis, the challenges of establishing the new water utility, etc., we're 3 years late in developing that plan. So it was actually a very short plan in the end, 2018 to 2021, the second River Basin Management Plan. And we're now getting ourselves back on track to deliver another 6-year cycle plan so that the third cycle plan will actually be delivered this year. A few months late, maybe 6 or 7 months late, but we are getting back on track in terms of our requirements. There has been intensive public engagement in developing the third River Basin Management Plan. The directive itself requires 3 cycles of public engagement, the third one really being the most important, because that's when we have the draft actions set out, when there's something very tangible for people to respond to. And that public consultation phase took place between September last year and March this year. And you can see Minister Darragh O'Brien and Minister Malcolm Noonan launching the public consultation phase back with the then chairman of Formishka, Tom Collins. So we've had a huge amount of structured engagement since then. On Forum Mishka, the National Water Forum is a fantastic resource, and I mentioned the launch of the public consultation phase under Dr. Tom Collins, and Tom has been succeeded as chair of Forum Mishka by Matt Crowe, who's sitting in the front row. So I'd just like to thank Matt for taking up the challenge of chairing the forum, and I wish Matt all the best in the next years and in the important work ahead. And it's a fantastic resource for the department. In addition to the forum, the Local Authority Water Programme, LawPro has led the community engagement up and down the country with public meetings in every single municipal area in each local authority. A fantastic engagement. And of course our colleagues in the ENGO side of the house under Swan have also been very good contributors to the process. So that's given us an opportunity to hear both national concerns at national level, and the very local issues that are in people's minds, because that is really crucially important. How do you get local engagement? Because I'm a firm believer that we won't solve the challenges that Laura and Emer have pointed out unless there is real public buy-in and engagement and understanding. And often the case, I think, something like water, people find it more difficult to engage with, rather than whether it's tidy towns or litter or something. It's very easy to see and tangible. You can touch and deal with. Where water quality issues can be much more diffuse, much more difficult to know. Well, how do you actually tackle the issues, or what are the actual issues in our local river? So that's was a very, very invaluable exercise to collect that, to have that engagement and to collect the local issues. So in total, we have had over 1,400 submissions, in addition to the collated comments from the regional meetings organised by LawPro and a range of other bilateral meetings, including with Forum Mishka and other stakeholders. So a huge amount of information has been collated. I won't spend much time with this. Emer has already brought you through the figures in relation to the status of our waters, but I think it's worth looking again at that map in terms of showing the water bodies at risk. 1,603 water bodies at risk, 1,983 not at risk, and a further 1,200 or so in review. But that is not a pretty picture, and it shows the challenge facing us. Again, Emer has taken us through some of the challenges there in terms of water quality in lakes and rivers. I can't read all the figures from here. The glasses aren't that good, but look, I think you have a good idea from Emer's presentation of the trends. As Emer pointed out, the most significant pressures: agriculture, hydromorphology has leapt into second place, forestry, urban wastewater. On those significant pressures, water bodies impacted by agriculture has increased by 223. Water bodies impacted by urban wastewater has decreased by 83, and that's the greatest significant decrease in any one significant pressure type. Hydromorphology, significant increase in pressure, but as Emer pointed out, part of that is probably better information, better understanding of the pressures. But I do think there is a significant connection between the hydromorphology pressures and the agricultural pressures in terms of how the agricultural sector and the farming sector have been responding to economic signals. And again, that's something that Laura has touched on, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit further in our discussion. Some improvement in relation to forestry and urban wastewater, and I think in fairness to the forest sector, the impact of forestry and the systems of planting and felling and the pressures they've been putting on the environment have been well known for over 20 years, and the forest side have been responding to that, and improvements have been made, but there's more work to be done. In terms of the Third River Basin Management Plan, what are our principles in finalising it? Look, again, as Laura and Emer pointed out, we need to have an increased level of ambition. We know the requirements of the directive, and they're certainly challenging, and they're going to be challenging for every member state. We will be putting an emphasis on integrated catchment management planning for each of the 46 catchments in the state, providing opportunities for greater public participation and engagement at local and regional level. And again, touching on what Laura has said, and it's something I'm very strong on, as people will be bored hearing me say, particularly because of my background previously with responsibility for heritage and the National Parks and Wildlife Service. I'm definitely very, very passionate in terms of integrating our concerns in relation to water quality, biodiversity, loss and challenge, and climate change. And I was talking to one of our speakers who'll be speaking tomorrow from Louth County Council. How local authorities have a real resource, bringing all of those factors together at local level. Sometimes government departments find that more difficult, but there's fantastic opportunities, I think, at local authority level to work cohesively to bring all actions, to develop actions and responses on the ground which can respond to all those three challenges. Looking at some of the sectoral issues, the plan would contain obviously programs of measures. Continued increased investment in our water infrastructure continues to be critical. We have succeeded in protecting and ensuring a very high level of investment through Irish Water. We're beginning to see the impact of that. So, of the 172 large urban areas, 28 were non-compliant in 2017 with the Urban Wastewater Directive. This fell to 19 in 2019 and 12 in 2021. Our objective had been to clear all those non-compliant areas by 25. I think there will be some slippage, as Emer pointed out. The EPA are concerned about slippage, as are the department. So we have more to do to tackle those issues, but investment and capital is not an issue in terms of the government support for investment. There is also, I think, areas where we need to tackle in terms of the sewer network performance as well, in addition to the treatment plants. And of course, just in terms of investment in water and water infrastructure, we have the wider objective of ensuring that we support other government objectives, and particularly the Housing for All, housing being the biggest socioeconomic challenge facing the government right now. So, for example, this year we're spending almost 1.5 billion euro in water services, including 830 million in capital investments. So that's a huge amount of investment currently taking place. Emer has taken us through the challenges in agriculture. There's some kind of graphic photographs of those challenges in terms of fertilizer or slurry being spread at the wrong time or in excess of crop requirements, inadequate storage, leaks, overflow of waters, and phosphorus, pesticides, and so on, and siltation. And again, interestingly, talking about the economic responses by agriculture, listening to an agriculture program or news on Radio Ulster last week, and the farming organisation saying we're absolutely encouraging people to maximise the application of fertiliser this year, notwithstanding the cost, because of the Ukrainian crisis and the need to up agricultural production. So, this is running fast to stay still. What was, Emer's here? Running fast to stand still, yeah. It goes to show that those pressures, the amount of work we put in, and that kind of message is still permeating out there. It's very, very difficult. We have published the 5th nitrates action programme with tougher rules, but as Laura pointed out, better enforcement is key, and we'll hear more about nitrates, I think, in the next session from Gorka Barrio Montoya from the Commission, who'll be talking to us about the challenges across Europe. The advisory service has to be real, and we have to make sure that there is no mixed messages from different areas of the advisory service in the agriculture sector, whether it's Teagasc advisors or advisors from the private sector. So, although we've heard in the past from agriculture here, so the CAP can't answer everything, it is important to ensure that the CAP policies are completely aligned with our objective. In terms of forestry, I said a lot of work has gone into improving the design of forest setbacks, more use of broadleafs, and felling, and we need to continue that work to continue to address the outstanding issues from forestry. Again, Emer mentioned we were delighted to get support from the European Commission for a Waters of Life integrated programme led by Anne Goggin, and that was launched by Minister Malcolm Noonan in Limerick about 2 weeks ago. And that will be focusing on reversing Ireland's high status, the loss of Ireland's high status river water bodies and it will seek to develop 6 demonstration projects. And again, results-based agricultural payments will be a key part of that scheme. So look, that will be a very important scheme to help develop responses in the years ahead. And again, it's a project which is supported by ourselves, LawPro, Department of Agriculture, Kilter, Fire Service, EPA, GHH, local development companies, and so on. So again, that's good cross-cutting integration. Hydromorphology, which again, as Emer has pointed out, has come to the fore as a more significant pressure than possibly had been thought before, and possibly an increasing, as well as being an increasing pressure. And again, the pictures tell a thousand words. We've the old Ardna Crusher, which we've known it's been there since 1928. But on the right, you see the very typical scene across the agricultural landscape now of channels dug deep and dug bare, which are both damaging to biodiversity and damaging to long-term viability of our soils as they just encourage soil runoff and siltation. Not a good response. The legislation governing land drainage in Ireland is hugely complex, spread across a large number of codes. It relates lots of stakeholders, agriculture, fisheries, anglers, and so on. And it's an area that needs to be updated, but it's an area of, I suspect, as I said, complexity, but also emotional sensitivity, I suspect, when you look at the challenges that we faced in trying to cut down the damage we're doing to our peatlands and how difficult that is. There are similar challenges, I think, in trying to address the legislation and governance of drainage in Ireland, but it is something that we are absolutely keen to do. And then finally, in relation to programs of measures, we're looking to develop nature-based solutions in relation to urban runoff to take the pressure off our sewers and sewer overflows, which can lead to types of periodic pollution during times of heavy rainfall. We have developed new technical guidance, interim guidance. We'll be working with local authorities and their planners to try and roll that out before we develop final guidance in this area. And again, as Emer finished with climate change, I'll also finish with climate change. We know the challenges that we face here in terms of both higher impact rainfall incidents, possibly coupled with periods of drought. How do we deal with those issues? We have a climate adaptation and mitigation plan which we'll need to update, but that's something which we'll have to incorporate into our thinking and our design at all stages, and it's something that Irish Water will be doing, for example, in relation to its infrastructure design. So that's a kind of a run through where we are at the plan. In terms of the next steps, we are now working to review all those comments, have those final conversations in relation to settling out outstanding policy issues, and to try and bring the plan to conclusion and to bring it to government, to bring it to conclusion over the summer and to bring it to government in the early autumn for publication. And maybe to finalise, we can put significant resource behind it, we can put significant policy work behind it, but as Laura said, there's also a need for greater compliance and enforcement on the ground. Again, I think local authorities have a huge role here. They have suffered in terms of resources. I think the local authority sector lost more resources in terms of personnel through the economic recession than in the other state sector. That's recovering, but I think on the environmental side, we're playing catch up, and I think that's something we will need to address. We're working with the City and County Management Association to look at the needs of the local authority sector in terms of its role in relation to the water environment and the remaining functions in the water space that local authorities will have once the integration of the public water services into Irish Water is concluded in the coming years. And I think that will be key, because I think having a local responsibility and local response to local challenges is key, including in relation to enforcement. So that will be a priority for us. So Sinead, so thanks very much, and look forward to the discussion.